All right, so we're going to start the biomolecules unit. And so you're going to have to think about the biomolecules that make up all living things. And an easy way to think about it is thinking about what you eat. So thinking about what you ate yesterday, what types of food did you eat? How would you classify these foods, right? You kind of already have an innate sense of, like, especially if you do sports, that what you eat is directly related to your output and performance, right? So for example, things like carbs are what you would eat before like a cross country meet or like a soccer game, because you need a lot of energy that you're going to be running around with, right? You need to increase your protein if you are exercising because you need to build up your muscles that you're tearing. And so you're kind of subconsciously aware of these groups of foods that we consume. And so we're going to talk about them in more detail. So an essential question is, what is biochemistry? Remember, bio means life, and chemistry is the study of chemicals and molecules and atoms. And so biochemistry is when you study the chemicals and molecules related to life and living things. So we're going to talk about, for example, there are atoms, which are individual units of a chemical that move individually. There are molecules of an element where you have 2 or even 3 or 4 of the same type of chemical that are bonded together. And you have molecules of a compound where they are bonded across different chemicals. For example, carbon dioxide is carbon bonded with oxygen, right? Water is H2O, that's hydrogen bonded with oxygen, and that would be molecules of a compound. So again, molecules are just a group of atoms bonded together. Here's a picture of water. Here's a picture of oxygen. Oxygen is just an O and an O bonded together. That's why they are represented by the same color and the same size. Oxygen is a lot bigger than hydrogen. So over here, you can see the hydrogen is represented by a smaller round atom, and then oxygen is represented by this larger red atom. So molecules are groups of atoms bonded together. So biomolecules are living, is from bio, and then molecules means group of atoms. So basically, when you combine the two, it doesn't mean that it's a living group of atoms, right? For example, you can't say that your bread is a living group of atoms, even though it is made of biomolecules. Instead, you would actually flip it and you say it's a group of atoms that are related to living, right? So biomolecules are molecules produced by living organisms, including macromolecules. So they're produced by living organisms, and then they're also consumed by living organisms. So they're in this never-ending cycle of being used and made and used and made. But they're not created out of nowhere. They're created using broken down versions of other chemicals or other molecules. So this unit is going to be about biomolecules, but more specifically, we're going to be talking about biological macromolecules. So before we talk about that, we have to talk about what exactly is a macromolecule, right? When you say micro means small, right? When you talk about a microscope, you're looking at small things under a microscope. So macro is the exact opposite, and macro means large or big. So what is a macromolecule? A macromolecule is a very large molecule made of many smaller units. And so we're going to actually go into the detailed vocab regarding the smaller units names and the bigger units names, right? So a macromolecule is the big one made up of the small ones. So there technically would be a term for micromolecules, but we don't actually use that. Important vocab now. Mono, right? If you think about monotonous, if you think about monogamy, mono means one. So here you can see as a prefix, monotonous means one tone, right? Talking in one tone, very, very boring, kind of how I'm talking right now, right? Monogamy is when you're married only to one other person, or you're in a relationship with one other person. So that's also a one. So mono means one. Poly, now, you have polytheism, you have polygons, you have polygamy. Poly means many, right? So if you look at these images right here, polytheism means believing in many gods. So you have a religion that is polytheistic, means that the religion has many gods. For example, like Greek mythology, where there's Zeus, Athena, Hera, Demeter. So like all of those are multiple gods, but it's still one religion. Polygamy means being in a relationship or being married to multiple spouses, right? Polygons have multiple sides. So poly means many. So monomers and polymers are related in a sense. So monomers are the repetitive units of a polymer. So when you take one monomer and copy and paste it many, many, many times and you link them together, you get a polymer. And from the opposite side, it's the same definition, but polymers are long molecules built from repeating monomers. So for example, if you have a chain, each little link is a monomer, and then when you put a bunch of the links together, that chain is the polymer. So here is an image where you can see a bunch of monomers linked together, and this whole thing overall is a polymer. But the monomer is this single individual unit that is being repeated over and over and over and over and over to make this overall polymer. You can look at the same thing in a sequence right here. So if you have ABC, 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 the monomer that is repeating the whole time to make up this big chain of letters or polymer of letters is ABC, right? You wouldn't say it's A because if you just repeated A, it would be A, and it would just be like right? And it wouldn't just be B because it would just be B, 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 B. You have to say that the monomer is ABC because that is the smallest unit that is repeating, right? It's ABC, and then ABC, and then ABC. So you don't have this in a packet, but this is still a good table to look at, right? So if the polymer is a train, each individual train car is going to be the monomer. When you stack a bunch of train cars together and you hook them up together, you get the train, which is the long chain, okay? So if you have chain links, like I said earlier, if you link them all together, you get a chain, and that would be the polymer. If you have a pearl necklace, the individual units that are combined and connected to make this polymer are monomers of pearls. So if you're actually looking at molecules now, these get a little bit more complicated, but the idea is the exact same. So if you look at the monomers of these polymers, you're just looking for the individual repeating unit. And so you can see there's this little hexagon, and then a hexagon, and then a hexagon, and a hexagon, and so on and so forth. And you can notice that this is the repeating part. So if you just circle one, that would just be one monomer. In actual chemistry, you can just break these off one at a time to show the actual monomer. Here it's a little bit harder. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there's a CH, a CN, CHCN, CHCN in the middle chain. So you'd be able to break it off to CHCN is just one single monomer, because after you see the CHCN, it just repeats back again as CHCN, CHCN, right? Over here, we're looking at part of a nucleic acid or a DNA or an RNA, and you can see that there's a P, there's a pentagon, and a rectangle. The P, the pentagon, and a rectangle. P, pentagon, rectangle. If you just circled the P, that would be incorrect, because then you just have a bunch of these circles with P connected over and over and over and over. But we actually have this whole unit right here that is being copied over and over and over. So technically this whole piece, even though it has 3 individual parts in it, this is the monomer. So we're going to talk about the 4 big groups of macromolecules now, and they are lipids, nucleic acids, proteins, and carbohydrates, following up in this worksheet.